Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So sorry for the delay and the gap here. So we'll be finishing the ranking video series obviously in January, but until then I can squeeze a couple in. And obviously we decided that Cosmic class, well, you could argue that Skill and Cosmic class are the two weakest classes in the game at the moment, especially when we primarily take in consideration the lack of top 7 stars. In both of the classes, really, in between Kate, Kingpin, and Nick Fury in skill class, and then obviously, I'd say 4 of the top 5 Cosmic champions, or 3 of the top 4 Cosmic champions not being out as 7 stars as well. The big change for this year's rankings will be that if you are not out as a 7 star, you will get an honorable mention, because those champions do matter a ton, but we will not include them in the rankings, because these rankings, well, I personally go here with the current game relevance and trends, as well as my own personal opinions, but realistically, they are of the champions that are the most sought after, the most desired, the most ranked, the ones that will earn your awakening gems, your signature stones, the ones that you will throw your catalysts into, the ones that you will pick from your 7-star nexuses, and so on and so forth. And well, if a champion isn't out as a 7-star, we are at a point in a game where that is a very significant disadvantage already. That was, already noticeable when these champions had to contend with rank 3s only, and we are at a point where most of the top end decks, for instance, and just about all of the defense in Alliance Wars is filled with rank 3 7-star champions. Now, rank 4s are coming in, and that's gonna push the 6 stars in further. For instance, if you're gonna be able to use a, solidly good Serpent counter like Tigra, and she's only out at 6 star, and you're facing a rank 4 Serpent, that's gonna hurt a lot. And that is where we're at in the game. 7-star rank 4s are coming, 7-star rank 3s are already somewhat of a commonplace for the higher echelons of the game, and that's what these ranking videos are for. Not necessarily which champions have the best abilities on the paper, but which champions are currently the meta, which are the most used ones, the most popular, the most capable under the circumstances that Kabam provides us, not in a blank vacuum. Because if that was the case, we'd still be talking about Quake, for instance, being atop of the game or close to it, and so on and so forth. So this is the old list. Needless to say, quite a lot of champions that are on this list will not feature it anymore, just like Hercules, Hulkling, CGR, Serpent. Hercules, Hulkling, CGR, and Galen. Right, let's get to the new ones. And again, honorable shout out, first and foremost, Hercules. I think Hercules actually has kind of aged the poorest of all the Cosmic top champions. He obviously still has his strengths, but as far as competitive play is concerned, you do see him a lot less, and you use him a lot less daily. Now, he still can be very capable AQ champions for the weeks that there are no raids. He's still, capable questing champion, especially if you're clearing Act 6, 7, and 8 and stuff like that. But his kind of dominance and role in the game unquestionably has diminished. That said, still like a must-have champion. If you do have a well-established account, you definitely do want to have an access to Hercules, because there are times and places in the game where he's just insane. But from competitive standpoint, at the moment, even a 7-star Hercules, I don't think would make that big of a wave. Again, I understand why Kabam dislike him, because he makes half the game that exists like a complete joke. But specifically speaking, like Alliance Wars and Battlegrounds and stuff like that, I don't think him coming out as 7-star, which probably will not happen, wouldn't, be end of the world type situation. So besides Hercules, we obviously do have Hulkling. Hulkling, I think, has aged the best alongside CGR, because he's still present, he's still, viable. He can still nuke down plenty fast. He can be quite annoying to fight if you do not have a good counter. He still currently has a place in the game. I do think that is going to go away as 7-star rank 4s are, going to become more available. But as of right now, I do think there's tremendous value. Again, just like Hercules, I do think this is a 6-star. You rank up, you ascend for sure. But since he's not out of the 7-star, we're not going to include him in the list. And we got CGR, still can nuke a ton, still good. And again, just kind of, in my opinion, also starting to, struggle a little bit in his nuke potential. But again, with according metas and right matchups, he's still tremendously valuable. Definitely a 6-star you do want to ascend and rank 5. And obviously, when you can put on some Cosmic Powerback boosts and recalls on him, that is an entirely different playing field where he can nuke everything. Still a great champion. And that's why I'm making such a big emphasis on, pointing them out before I go in the actual top 10. Because realistically, any one of those champions would come out as a 7-star, they would be in the top 3. And then we have Galen as well. I think Galen also, you would notice a significant change in his use if he was available as 7-star. Immediately. If his planetary blow-up range was higher, he would have immediately become much more, usable. It's a great example of how I understand that even a great matchup for Galen, he kind of can fall off short. And it's currently in this Gladiator Circuit meta, which is kind of like a nuke meta, and there are very few counters to Penny Parker. And he will nuke down a 6-star rank 5 ascended Penny Parker. He will nuke down 7-star rank 2 Penny Parker. But going up against 7-star rank 3 Penny Parker, once you do your harvest explosion, Penny is left at like 8 to 10% health, and then that significantly increases the fight duration, and then, it completely changes how good effectively he is in that matchup. So, he just, has to come as a 7-star, man. So, those are the most needed shoutouts, every single one of those champions. Again, I'd still recommend to take up as 6-star rank 5. I'd still recommend to ascend. They do have places in the game. But this is the time I'm making the cutoff of, just like I did before with champions that are not available as 6-stars, which, took away Quake and took away Magic and, other champions at the time. Now we're going to be making that cutoff with champions that are not available as 7-stars. So, let's move to spot number 10, and I'm going to give that to Adam Warlock. Adam Warlock has always been kind of like a hit or miss champion with me, and I actually did end up using him in my Necropolis run for the green challenges, and it just kind of reaffirmed me with everything that I thought about Adam already. And the fact is, there's like surprisingly large amount of matchups where you don't want to throw your level 2s, for instance, because that pod is nowhere near as safe as you'd like to believe it is. Because of, some debuffs sticking, some detrimental effects still happening whilst you're in the pod, and overall, again, AI being uncooperative, it can definitely be a deal breaker. You have the time, either have like a very good run and you feel very good fighting him and he does great, and then, you do have this frustrating time when, AI doesn't throw a special attack or they just start dancing about, and it happens. There are people who absolutely swear by the champion. Again, to me, he's not necessarily my cup of tea. I, play him when I have to, when I feel like he's potentially the best option. But again, just about every single time I have used him, I have had to feel quite a lot of frustration when things go wrong. He's definitely, again, one of those champions that either works very well and then all of a sudden doesn't, and then you take hits in the face and then you lose your ramp and then you get kind of like delayed. Overall, still a very capable champion with immunities and, pseudo immunities to a ton of things. But again, the nature of his playstyle, I think, is what's largely holding him back from being like super reliable. The same thing, I have seen Adam do some crazy fights and, nuke down Kindred, for instance. And then I have seen Adam get smacked around with some of the matchups that he should be great against as well. And it's always kind of like throwing a bit of a coin, I'd say. Moving on, spot number 9, I'm going to give it to Vox. I think Vox is very solid for what he is. Tons of degen damage, tons access to tons of buffs. And that's where we basically stand. I do like his Undermine on his level 1. Level 2 has Vigilance, which I'll be honest, you kind of typically get less use of. Undermine is the main piece of utility that you bypass the auto blocks. And I like him. I think he's solid. Realistically, again, I don't think he would make a top 10 in just about any other class, maybe with the exception of skill. I think he's a good, solid champion, one of the better champions that Kabam gave away for in that 10 times 10. I think he's, fairly decently good unawakened as well, which is a bonus, similar to Adam 2. The best thing about him probably is the immunity to power burn, power drain, power lock, and special lock. So whenever there are any shenanigans with power bars, Vox is basically going to be immune to that. And poison, but he just doesn't seem to have quite enough to be at the very tippy top of the game. He's also a bit of hit and miss, pending whether AI will throw the special attacks. You do need to line things up the best you can. He's also one of those champions that I personally typically dislike in the playstyle, where you need to make a decision whether you're gonna risk it and try and time everything perfectly to get the max damage output, and there's like quite significant difference at the end in whether you can get a couple of extra ticks of degen, or you're gonna kind of like bust and lose basically all your ramped up damage, or you can play safe and have him do less damage but fulfill his main functions. But that said, I have seen him across the game in general, in story content, in battlegrounds and alliance war. He's not like a staple champion to people by any means, but he's definitely good enough to pay attention to invest and use when the necessity arises, which is why I feel like he kind of belongs in the top 10, albeit on the lower side. Spot number 8, I'm going to give it to Nova, and here I hope this actually is going to climb higher, because I really personally do like Nova. I do have a 6-star rank 5 Ascended and an unduped 7-star. And that's kind of like one of the problems with Nova as well, is that, number one, he does want to be quite high sig to begin with, and number two, he's just very recently kind of like entered the base pool, I believe, just now, and was, in Titan Crystal, so not that many people still have a 7-star dupe Nova. But overall, we could definitely see his presence kind of like increase yet again with several of the metas, with, the node combinations. He, is a solid dual purpose character. His non-contact mediums easily allow you to counter some of the, tricky skill defenders, be that a Tuma, be that Korg, for instance. His armor break is very solid against tech champions. Defensively, he can be a massive pain in the bum as well, or at the very least, a good stall option under certain conditions too. And I just think he's, again, similar to Vox, kind of like for what he is. He actually, with Nova, I feel like he's better than quite a few people realize. And now more and more top endgame players are kind of turning to Nova and doing some crazy good things. Like when you are facing an opponent who does have a rank 3 high signal in their deck, I do have a natural urge to ban that Nova, because again, it's a dual purpose champion. Typically the people know what they're doing with him, and he can do some surprising matchups as well. So I personally really like him. I do see him about quite a bit too. Obviously in Alliance War he primarily takes defensive role, and then it's battlegrounds. It's not necessarily the best specifically for like questing and incursions. I'd say that Adam and Vox are better than he is in those areas, but I still would find him more desirable and kind of more popular and present, especially if his availability was as big as, let's say, Vox's, even though that's borderline impossible since Vox was given away to everybody. Right, Hyperion as spot number 7. This might actually be a bit too low. I do think that Hyperion is one of those champions that has aged extremely well. He's still viable, and his position kind of slides up and down, and as it should, realistically, because these rankings are also based on what currently is needed in the game, which game modes are the most dominant, which type of defenders are the most dominant. And Hyperion, again, is rarely the best option, but he will often be a serviceable option. Here I like to use examples of, for instance, champions like Atuma. you can, for instance, fight a tumor quite easily just by largely spamming your level 1s without, you know, making very few contact hits. You'll take a bit of damage here and there, but you're going to have Incinerate, so you're going to get rid of his hydration charges, so you're not going to have to worry about him going unstoppable. Again, you're largely going to be landing special non-contact attacks, but on the flip side, it's not necessarily going to be the fastest thing in the world, and you will still be making a few contact hits, so, you know, a counter like Negasonic or Onslaught will obviously be better. But he's going to be better than the vast majority of the champions against that Atuma. And that is where he kind of has always been for me since just about the beginning of the game. Very rarely it was like, Hype is #1 option. It was often, you know, Hype can do it. Not ideal, but he can. And that's where he is. And obviously, if RNG does shine upon you, he can put up some ridiculous fight times as well that I have seen. With AI being sometimes a bit iffy, he can be a solid defender, even though I do feel like his defensive threat overall has lessened with the general increase in the strength of Mystic attackers, and also Science being capable of, you know, deal with ability power gain quite well. Still, definitely one of the more desirable 7 stars with Hype. You do want to get him awakened, but his 6 scaling is absolutely abysmal, so there's no point in giving him 6 stones. I very recently awakened my Hyperion, and I am definitely looking forward to ranking him up to rank 2 initially and potentially to rank 3 after I do 2 more cosmic rank ups, one of whom is in this list, one of whom I will have to talk about separately. All that said, I do think Hype has an argument for being higher in this list as well. And next to, I think I'm going to have to kind of clump it together. I put Scream and Medusa as number 6 and number 5. Both of them kind of fulfill very similar roles, like Cosmic Champions with a lot of buffs and access to armor breaks, except that Scream is kind of like newer with additional mechanics of madness and, you know, several different buffs. Like she has access to the Wishes, to Energize, to Bulwark, to Impact. So there's like more complexity, but quite similarly, she has access to Undermine, whilst Medusa has access to True Accuracy, so they do kind of fulfill similar roles. You can reduce the armor up ability accuracy against tech champions. Medusa does that too now with Armor Shatter there. You shut down their Wade against Spider-Verse heroes. Medusa shuts down their Wade, period. And that is like one of the reasons why I kind of, for now, put Medusa above Scream, even though it might change again. It's very early. Both Scream is a new champion, Medusa is brand new buff. So it remains to be seen which one of these champions is going to be kind of like overall excelling more. But in reality, even though obviously they do have their innate differences, they have a lot in common, besides the fact that they do like to attack with their hair. Again, going with the armor break, dealing with tech armor up ability accuracy. Reduction, Medusa has the True Accuracy buff that she can access very easily, and effectively Scream has both components of True Accuracy, Undermine for the auto block and, you know, the Wade prevention against Spider-Verse heroes, but Medusa has it like more generalized version of that in the True Accuracy. But again, True Accuracy does have some weaknesses. For instance, Undermine works against Penny, whilst True Accuracy doesn't. So there are ups and downs for both of the champions, for sure. The reason why I placed Medusa higher than Scream at the moment is because Medusa has overall much greater accessibility. I kind of feel like because of this gifting event, a very significant portion of the player base does have access to Medusa's 7-star. And on top of all of that, Medusa is kind of like easier to get on with. She's much easier to play, much easier to understand. There's a lot less happening. All of those things can change over time. I do have my obviously healthy kind of concerns for both champions. Number one is typically tech champions aren't necessarily the defensive juggernauts so far in the game. There are hardly any, you know, tech champions, or very few tech champions that we view as like defensive powerhouses. There'll be like Red Skull and also you have besides Red Skull Fam, and again Fam's not available 7-star, so he's slowly gonna kind of like, and Fam has plenty of counters in general, and so kind of does Red Skull as well, but those are the most capable tech defenders. So obviously they are both great in those matches, but it will kind of go down to how well both Scream and Medusa do in like different class matchups against champions, you know, like onslaughts against champions like I don't know. Obviously neither one of them are going to be great against Serpent, but you guys know what I mean. Against skill defenders who's quite defensively heavy class. But definitely I do think both of them have a ton of potential. And I hope that they kind of maintain, stay, and increase, because currently both of those champions are quite hyped and desired, and also present. Spot number 4, I'm going to give to Maestro. Maestro is still kind of hanging in there, but that primarily is, I would say, largely because of his, you know, immense accessibility. He is one of the, you know, 2 to 3 staple Cosmic Rank 3 champions you see the most in people's decks. Because, you know, there's a guaranteed way how to acquire him. Now there will be 2, and also his awakening is going to come into play because activating, well, he's going to become more capable as a defender and an attacker, because once you get Maestro Awaken, now activating a special attack grants an additional 3 Neutronium, as well as refresh all personal fury effects. This is going to be helpful both offensively and defensively. It means he's going to, you know, ramp up faster. And offensively, as a defender, he's going to ramp up faster, but also as an attacker. And also, offensively, you're going to have a much easier time maintaining your furies. You're not going to have to go to the cycle of level 2, level 1, and then level 1 rush to level 2 type thing. It's going to be level 2 and then spam your level 1s. And each Neutronium also grants Maestro block penetration. That obviously is just going to make him more annoying to fight against, because quite often you do end up, you know, taking some hits in the block against Maestro, especially when you might get rooted against special attacks. So he does have counters, plenty of them, but the thing is, often, you know, he's chunky enough to kind of like resist, or if the fight doesn't go perfect. And now that there are possibilities of Maestro going to rank 4, I think that alone is going to make him significantly trickier to deal with. He's one of those champions that you do want to have at the highest progression level, because if you can kind of deal with him up until the point where he gets the passive glancing up, he's much easier champion to deal with. When he's fully ramped, which is going to be faster now, and if he's chunkier, you know, it's going to be harder to nuke him till then. But yeah, if he gets his passive glancing up, you know, you're kind of in for a bad time. Right, spot number 3, I'd say, is Knull. Knull is, as well, not everybody's cup of tea. He's typically a champion that does require quite big of an investment, and he's more of a champion for the occasion, I'd say. A lot of people do have him awakened, they do not and ranked up, and they love him whenever they do get a chance to use him. I know, like Zurafa, you know, did the entire Necro run instead of Wong using Knull, and he had a great time. I know quite a few people who did that. And now, again, in Battlegrounds, in some metas, he can be very capable attacker. In some metas, he's going to be a very solid dual-purpose champion, like right now, because of the fact that, you know, of the Matador node. You do not want him to throw his level 1s in order to have to deal with the reverse controls, making the fight significantly trickier. Pushing him to level 2 takes up a lot more time, and, you know, inequity is working in his favor. Often as a defender that reduced bleed damage, degen damage, and poison damage, it's also kind of like giving him extra chunkiness. He's kind of like a staple Alliance War defender quite often too. So I do think that Knull, you know, quite rightfully so, is towards the top of the Cosmic 7-star list, Cosmic Champions list. That said, again, just about any other class, I would not place him anywhere near that high. I think this, you know, kind of speaks to where Cosmic class is at. I do think that realistically, Scream and Medusa are kind of poised to move towards the top positions. But first, that has to happen. That's just my personal prediction, but I think realistically, Scream Medusa could potentially move on to, you know, spots number 2, 3, 4, somewhere in that range. But yeah, still currently, Knull has been aging very well overall, all things considered. Spot number 2 is Venom. And the dude just got a complete revival as a 7-star with that Venom relic, you know. He, by himself, is nowhere near as capable as when combined with that relic. And that changes a ton for him and makes him to an offensive beast. It is kind of like, I don't know, funny to me a bit, because for a while where I valued Venom and Venom Pool relatively equal or slightly edging out Venom, people were very harsh to kind of like jump on Venom Pool's team, saying like Venom Pool has this, Venom Pool has that, and I was always in the camp of, yeah, Venom has a lot of what Venom Pool does, but Venom does it all much quicker. He doesn't need the ramp up and stuff like that, and therefore, naturally, given the choice, if Venom can answer that problem, you'd prefer Venom, because even back then, he was kind of faster than Venompool was, because he's less of a ramp up champion than Venompool is. And now, with that relic, there's no real competition. Venom is, I'd say, up there in terms of, like, potential nukes. Obviously, there's a RNG element involved, which buffs you roll up, and whether your heavy attack will, get you a reroll that you want. But thanks to Venom Relic, it's fairly consistent that as long as you get some half decent buffs and it's not all just physical resist or armor ups, you're gonna be doing well. And yeah, he's just very, very nukey. Obviously, against Spider-Verse champion, he shuts down the Wade. He's still great against a ton of tech champions because Power Burn, Power Drain, Immune, has access to easy armor break. All of those things matter. Obviously, massive level 2 as well. A very simple champion as well. Definitely capable though. Again, one of the finer buffs that has aged extremely well, I would say. And the top champion is no surprise. Top champion, I have spoken about Serpent so much in so many different videos, but the point is, I think he's bad for the game. I think that design is bad for the game. I think champions like Serpent make this much more of a rock, paper, scissors trading card game than it does a fighting game. Because regardless of how capable or skilled you are, unless you get like one of the top 5 counters to this guy in any particular meta, you're just kind of cooked in Battlegrounds. And I don't like that. I think it's taking the game exactly in the wrong direction, where again, it's less of a fighting game and more of a card game, and it's more, whether you're lucky enough to draw it. I think the reasoning that Kabam used not to nerf him was absolutely bullshit as well, because they invoked like player strategies, dealing with Serpent, such as banning him. With that kind of argument, release a 7-star Quake now, because people can just ban 7-star Quake, And they're so full of shit sometimes. Regardless of all that, he exists in the game in the current form. Obviously, Kabam's making, millions now selling counters to Serpent. In the last, 3 months, last 4 months, we have gotten Isophene, who's, again, flat out counter to Serpent, overall mid-champion, but a solid Serpent counter. We got Spiral, who's, again, designed to counter Serpent, and currently bugged, unfortunately, making her hard to evaluate. We have Shatterer released very recently, and then we have like the OG options and some of the newfound options as well, in between Symbiote Spider-Man, in between Kushala, in between America Chavez, in between Luke Cage, so on and so forth. But ultimately, the point is, he is the most desired Cosmic Champion. If you do not have a 7-star Serpent, and you play this game seriously, you do want 7-star Serpent. Primarily because of his defense, obviously, but also offensively. I think, as he just proved in the Korean challenges and the hashtag Gods and Nulsvorty, he's a very capable attacker for longer form content. I, for instance, found him to be one of my MVPs in Act 9.1. I obviously did Necro Run with him, where he did tremendously well. I have done some EOP fights with him, where he was amazing again. So he's not a Battlegrounds type of attacker, but in general, offensively, he is also very, very powerful. And then, obviously, Alliance Wars and Battlegrounds, he's primarily a defender. I actually have used him a handful of times on attack too, but still. And he has just about every ability under the sun to make just about all champions that are designed prior to midpoint of 2024 completely useless against him. He goes stun immune when opponent throws special attacks, insane power gain, check. When knocked out, regen and power gain, check. Pierce for insane block damage, check. Unblockable, undexable special attacks, check. All of that stuff. Stupid. He's a stupid champion, but again, without question, the most sought after, the most ranked, the most used, the most desirable Cosmic Champion in the game right now is Serpent. Do not even accept any negotiations here. And then, another champion that we obviously do need to mention is going to be Deathless Thanos. He looks good. He looks very good, I'm not going to lie. He looks poised to join the top of the Cosmic class, somewhere in top 3. Hope that's the case. It looks like he will have quite a bit of defensive value. He looks like he's obviously going to be somewhat capable attacker as well. Utilizing the counter punch mechanic, getting easy intercepts, access to, you know, dots that nobody's immune to, access to buffs and fairly big numbers, access to armor shatter. He seems like, you know, he'll make a big impact in the game. Cannot possibly evaluate it because nobody has him yet. But he's going to be cracking some skulls for sure. Right. So that was the old one. This is the new one. Again, Hercules, CGR, Hulkling, and Gallon would all be in like top 5, top 7. Top 5 realistically, I think. If they were 7 stars. So if you do find issue with me not including them, you know, just adjust the list accordingly. Take Hercules, CGR, Hulkling as the top 3. And then add in Gallon somewhere in the middle. Just so everybody's happy. So, let me know what you think, and I will catch you guys soon. Bye-bye. Skill class next. Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So, we have all the information about